Motorola phones have come a long way. And to think that Motorola could have come with one of the slimmest smartphones, 144Hz, super smooth 3D curved OLED display, a 50 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization, and much more, all within a mind-blowing price point of under 30,000 rupees. Sounds too good to be true, but let's talk about it. So, indeed, it is the world's slimmest IP68 water and dust resistant smartphone. And in fact, they were so serious about this being so thin that they clubbed it with an equally slim protection case. Like it just about covers the back, leaving the sides open, which still is a risk. But hey, you can get yourself other protectors if you want to. You're also going to find it a bit on the taller side. It's got a good display size and it's not too wide, so when you hold it, it feels like you're in control. But definitely not meant for one-hand use. Personally, I do prefer thicker phones, but there is something about very sleek phones. I just think they look and feel very futuristic, though I do agree it is a very subjective matter. Now, there could be possibly 3 consequences of this being very thin. The buttons themselves become very thin, and generally you use the power button a lot, so it's something that you'd get used to. Second, because it is so slim, you can't fit a battery with big capacity. So they still managed to get a 4400 mAh battery in this, which is still incredible. And third, heat management could be an issue, but we'll talk about that when we talk about performance. Of course, the slimness of the phone makes it so pleasant to just slide in and out of your pocket, and despite being so thin, they've managed to make it IP68 certified for water and dust resistant. I mean, that is commendable. Now, the back panel are actually of 2 types. I have the polycarbonate plastic back with lunar blue color, but there's also 2 colors in vegan leather material, which is what I would personally prefer if I were to go out and buy the Motorola Edge 40. They just look so premium and so good. Also, if you kept the phone flat on a table and used it, there would be significant rocking because of that camera housing. Now, this is a dual SIM phone where you can put in a physical SIM here and configure the second as an eSIM. It's also got a wide 5G coverage. It supports carrier aggregation and Wi-Fi 6 for, super fast network speeds. I'm also very glad that the phone comes with a base storage of 256 gigs for such a great price, making it even more of a value for money purchase. And it's also got stereo speakers, so you get sound from both the speaker and the earpiece right over here. It's got support for Dolby Atmos as well, and I think this sounded really good for a phone in this price segment. Definitely surpassed my expectation. Now, a big part of the design is actually that curved display. So let's talk about that. And the display does not disappoint. It's a flagship display, probably even better than some flagships. So it's a 6.55-inch FHD Plus POLED display with a plenty bright screen. Obviously, the highlight is the curved display. And as we know, there are 2 kinds of people, right? Those who prefer flat screen displays and those who prefer the curved displays. And this is clearly for the second group of people. And the curved displays, it does give you a more edge-to-edge fluid viewing, something that almost blends into the air. And they've managed to give in a 144Hz smooth display, while all others in the category give up to 120Hz. I mean, the difference is obviously not a whole lot, but the point is that it is going to be a tad bit smoother and that Motorola is willing to offer more than the competition. And it is an HDR10 Plus display, so essentially you get a very color-rich, detailed viewing experience. Now, Netflix doesn't recognize, I believe, that Motorola did not go through the process of acquiring the license, but nevertheless, you get super quality display. And now coming to performance. So this is the first phone that features the MediaTek Dimensity 8020 processor. And if you compare this purely on benchmarks, then also it fares very well. Even better than processors used in the more expensive phones. So there's definitely quite a lot of power that's packed into it, but even if you leave the benchmark scores aside, I just think it's a really good performer, super smooth, flawless performance. It's snappy, opening apps and moving between them is a breeze. Even while gaming, I could pretty much play at high graphics and high frame rates without any issue. And because this is 144Hz, certain games that play at high FPS naturally are a lot of fun to play. I also did not experience any significant heating on this. It's because Edge 40 does use some heating technique to regulate heat and maintain a comfortable device temperature, and I believe it's doing a good job. And now, let's talk about those cameras. And that's one of the key areas where Motorola has focused on by giving in a lot of features. So let's talk about that. So it's got 2 lenses at the back, a 50 megapixel primary lens with optical image stabilization and a 13 megapixel ultra-wide. The ultra-wide lens also works as a macro lens as well as for depth assist. But you know what? let's get into samples. So here's some photo samples taken using the primary lens, and I was out in the afternoon on what happened to be a cloudy day, and the pictures came out very well. Nothing seemed out of the place. Colors, white balance, exposure, all seemed quite well settled. However, whenever there's green in the photo, they seem to be a little too saturated, and there also seems to be more over-sharpening of trees and leaves to some extent. Now in this picture, you'll notice that the camera did something weird and for some reason made the sky behind these trees very blue. Indoors, the photos seem just about okay too. Not that it does a great job, but it's satisfactory to say the least. However, you have to make sure that there's ample ambient lighting in the surrounding, else your pictures may come out a bit grainy or low in detail. The only problem area I'd say is that when there's some light source, there tends to be a light leak or sometimes overexposure in that part. Coming to portrait mode, it's quite nice when it comes to shooting objects. Now, within the portrait shots, there's actually 3 modes that you could use. There's 24, 35 and 50 mm. The 35 and 50 mm are kind of just digitally zoomed in, but just gives the effect of a zoomed in portrait. And while they look just about okay, I would just stick to the 24 mm and walk in to take a higher quality shot. And here's a quick comparison between primary lens and the ultra-wide. So the 13 megapixel ultra-wide lens has a 120-degree field of view. And from what I can tell, it has a better dynamic range than the primary lens. And it's also a tad bit warmer and slightly darker than the primary lens, which is expected. However, as I said, the ultra-wide lens can also act as macro lens. And so here are some shots that I took in macro mode, and they're fine. I don't think many of us anyway take macro shots, so let's move on. But what we do take are selfies. So you've got a 32 megapixel front selfie camera, and as long as the lighting is ample and soft, the selfies are fine, except for maybe my lip color, which trust me, it isn't as orange as it seems to be. Now there seems to be some loss in texture and detail, but nothing too significant. However, in bright sunlight, the front camera isn't able to handle the exposure all that well on my skin. Indoors, if the lighting isn't enough, the selfies will come out soft and dull. And in low light situations, well, there's lack of focus as well as detail. Let's also take a look at the 4K video sample, and while the footage seems quite nice, it's probably not as stabilized as it wanted to be. When I take steps, I can see the jerks in the video, but if I used a gimbal, I think this would be great footage. And here's a low light sample, which surprisingly seems quite nice. It's obviously not as sharp as you'd like, but for a phone in this price segment, I think this is quite decent. An interesting video feature that Motorola has added is called horizon lock. So even if you move the camera or rotated the camera while shooting, the footage will stay in place and that itself will not rotate. And while it is a cool feature, I just wish that the resolution that it could shoot this at was higher for better quality. Now let's talk about the software. So it's running Android 13 and the experience is obviously very close to the stock Android experience as we see on Pixel phones. Now if you do pick up this phone, you'll get Android updates until Android 15 and not beyond that. The question though is how quickly will you get the upgrade when the new Android is out? The Motorola Edge 30 just recently received Android 13, so hopefully they pick up pace with the next set of upgrades, but no guarantee. It doesn't come with much bloatware except for a few proprietary Moto apps like Family Space, Moto Hub, and Moto Secure. Now Moto Secure is quite cool because it gives you the ability to create a vault space of your own where you can keep your photos, videos, and even apps that are completely sealed from your regular phone space. So if I don't have WhatsApp and Facebook here in the main app drawer, in my secure folder, they're right there and only I can access. Then there's edge lighting that lights up, for alarms, notifications, incoming calls. It's got a nice charging animation like the Pixel. There's also always on display, a built-in screen recorder to record your phone's screen. There's a sidebar that you can turn on for quick access to apps you use frequently. You can double tap the back to take a screenshot or do any of these functions that you see here. In short, it's got most things that you will need, from any OS, and it's going to keep you productive at all times. And finally, let's talk about the battery. So it's at best a full workday battery. So you'll get about 6 to 7 hours of screen on time. That's pretty much what you can expect. The important bit is that they now supply you with a fast 68-watt turbo power charger that can charge your phone extremely fast. So if your battery was to sink, you can top it up really quick. All in all, I think it is a fabulous phone from Motorola. It's got a very sleek design. It's IP68 water and dust resistant, so it's really durable that way. It's got stock Android with plenty features baked right in. They've introduced super fast charging in it, and it gives you that flagship level display experience as well. Just that the cameras aren't as good and the battery, owing to the slim design, can't be very good. But again, it is very difficult to ace every department of a smartphone and then come at an incredible price. I think from a value for money standpoint, this phone is bang on. So yeah, that's it about the Motorola Edge 40. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section and I'll definitely respond to you. And if you enjoyed watching the video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell notification icon and mark all so every time I upload a video, you get to know first. I'll see you guys in the next one.